welcome to Connected episode 244. It's made possible this week by our sponsors, Backblaze, FreshBooks, and TextExpander. I'm your host, Stephen Hackett, and I am joined by Mr. Federico Viticci.
Hello, Stephen Hackett. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you on this fine Wednesday?
I am doing better than in the previous weeks. I'm doing very, very well. Thank you.
Yes, we're going to talk about that a lot. There's a lot to cover this week. And of course, we are joined by everyone's favorite bearded British man, Myke Hurley.
You put a lot of qualifiers in that one.
I mean, I couldn't say favorite man.
Can't I just be everybody's favorite? Why can't I just be everybody's favorite?
Because it's Federico's week.
Oh.
Be everyone's favorites next week.
Next week? Okay, great.
Let's just dive right in. We have a lot of follow-up, and we're going to start with hashtag Beat Buffett. We're talking about Warren Buffett's weird iPhone game that's now just in the U.S. and how we felt like the high score was probably hard-coded.
This campaign was a failure, basically.
It was. We have a tweet. The highest we've seen was, 12,700? And Warren's, I'm looking at the screenshot, Warren Buffett's high score, 15,350.
Yeah. I do wonder if maybe you put in Warren Buffett as your username. Maybe it tricks the game into giving you a higher score. I'm surprised that nobody else has tried that before.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe you get like access to some kind of special mode.
the Warren mode.
The Warren
the
mode?
The Buffett mode.
Can you change your name? It is clearly very impossible to take that score. Oh, I deleted the app.
Oh, no.
I was done with it. I mean, how many more times am I going to play it? I boosted it off into the moon. It's gone. I threw it out of the window like one of these newspapers.
Like you threw out your phone.
I keep dropping my phone all the time.
Really?
Yeah, I've got so many. It's covered in scratches now, the screen. I don't know what's wrong with me.
But you have a case, right? You have a case.
Yeah. Oh, if I didn't have a case, this thing would have been obliterated before now. It's taken some real bad... Like, I dropped it a couple of days ago, and it hit a shelf.
Oh.
And on the way down, and just, catapulted its way across the room. So I'm pleased I have a case. I would have 100% blown through my 2 AppleCare repairs at this point.
Are you still using the silicon iPhone case, like the Apple case?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's not grippy enough, or you're just suddenly clumsy, or like...
Oh, I keep dropping it. I don't know what it is. It's not like it's slipping. I just keep dropping it.
Mm-hmm. It's almost as if the phone is too big and the Max was a mistake.
It's almost as if my hands aren't big enough.
Really, that's the problem.
That's the real problem.
You should find techniques to grow your hands bigger.
I'm going to look into that. Maybe I should get cases for my hands.
Like a hand extender medication. Something like that must exist. Like a pill that you take and it grows your hand,
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe some exercise to extend the length of your fingers.
Is there such an exercise that can do that?
I have no idea. Well, when I was younger, I think my mom convinced me, I don't know if this is true or not, that there were exercises that you could do to sort of force yourself to grow taller. Like if you remain suspended, like hanging on with your arms on like a bar or something, you force yourself to grow taller. Like
this is like some torture rack type stuff.
Yes, it sounds like a torture.
Yeah, it's medieval.
I think it's a medieval technique. I'm pretty sure that it's not true.
I'm not sure it's a good idea.
But I had a whole problem growing up, because until I was 14 or 15, I was very short. Very short, and then in the span of a summer, 2 months, I grew by 12 centimeters, and that made me feel a lot better. It was super awkward when I went back to school in September, and I was like a different person. But yeah, anyway, sorry. Yes.
Okay, I think that's enough of that.
Yes. Sorry.
Up next, we have some news from CNET that it seems that they may have fixed the Galaxy Fold. Samsung may have done it.
Yeah, let me talk about the Galaxy Fold. Let me talk about it.
Oh my God. Still.
Okay.
CNET are reporting on some other reports for some other websites that I've not yet seen corroborated.
This is not even their own report. They're reporting from... reporting on another... Okay.
Yeah, CNET are reporting based on reports from Yonhap News. I don't really know what that is, but
Okay.
I'm going on whatever I got. So apparently Samsung are going to be tucking the protective layer, the kind of screen protector, under the bezel now, so it doesn't come off and people won't want to pick it off. I don't know how this was ever a thing in the first place. And they've also reduced the size of some of the hinge parts, apparently, so it will be covered by a protective frame better. We'll see. Samsung certainly haven't said this, but someone is. So keeping that dream alive, boys.
Yeah, I sure hope that Yonhap news is correct.
Me too. Nobody hopes it more than me and Samsung's CEO.
And the folks at Yonhap also.
No, they're fine. Yonhap got what they need, right? Like they've got what they need. It looks like a Korean website. So,
okay. All right.
You know.
Well, I'm happy that you're holding on to this glimmer of hope. That is the Galaxy Fold mic. I want this to be true for you, mostly at this point.
Speaking of things that folded too soon, let's talk about Works with Nest.
Oh, that was a
Oh my God.
transition.
This was the partnership with Nest and some other devices that let them interact, including like the Amazon Echo voice assistant. It worked through this program and some other things. And Google has now extended that through August 31st. And they're using the time to work with partners to make a more permanent solution available. Almost as if it's what they should have done in the first place.
It's kind of
What-
funny,
what a
really.
concept.
Yeah, it's you work with these large companies, and yet you decide just not to bother mentioning to them. So
If they had announced this in the first place, saying, hey, you have until the end of August, and then we're going to move over, I don't think people would have been upset. But you pull the rug out from under everybody, then you have to go back. It's just, they really did it poorly.
but yet some stuff's never, like IFTTT is not mentioned, right? That's probably gone forever. They called out Amazon as like Google, like in Google's blog post, they specifically called out Amazon, right? That they're going to work with them, and they also said that they're going to work with partners and they're going to add assistant features that will help replace the stuff that's going to be lost. And they also spoke about, which I do appreciate, they're like, when we're working with people and adding these things in, we're actually going to do periodic security reviews of them. That's going to be part of it.
Good.
But like, see, this is what I mean. Like, stuff like that, you're like, yeah, Google, that's a really good point. Like, you should be doing periodic security reviews of the companies that you allow your products into, right? Probably nobody else is doing stuff like that, right? Like, you get the certification and then it's all job done. But that's the type of stuff people want to hear. They don't want to hear, like, oh, all the stuff that you currently are bought into, we just decided to kill it. So please buy our products instead.
Up next, I wanted to talk a little bit about ARM Macs. It has come up on Twitter in the last week after Mike's promised to buy me an ARM Mac if they come out this year, including if the Mac Pro is an ARM Mac, the highest spec. So just reminding people of that.
That's the one I wish I wouldn't have said. The laptop.
Now you wish you wouldn't have said that. That was so obvious.
The laptop, like, I could maybe get away with a bit, but like the highest end, the Mac Pro, I'm still feeling confident about it. Maybe.
You should feel confident
about the Mac Pro
I'm not.
specifically, but like I'm still just a little. I remain. That's the part that I'm most concerned about.
That's understandable because it could be very expensive. So it came up on Twitter, what defines an ARM Mac? Because Touch Bar Macs started with the T1 chip, and now they have the T2 chip. And
Can I stop you here for a second? I am unhappy with our listeners who are trying to like find loopholes. Right? To be like, oh, well, the T2 chip's an ARM chip. No, shut up, is what I say to you. Right? You know what I'm saying. Don't try and find loopholes.
this is literally the reason this is in follow-up. So
No, I appreciate you putting it in here, but I have nothing but disdain for people that made these claims to you, Stephen. Disdain for all of them.
I feel the phenomenon here is that people find it entertaining when you're forced to spend money.
Yeah. It's why all those YouTube videos are so popular, right? Like, I'm giving $50,000 to someone for sitting in a car for 6 hours. Like, it's just like a thing.
So I think we need to define this a little bit. So yes, Macs have ARM chips in them now, but they're secondary doing security things and the touch bar or whatever. I think the definition, I think this is a pretty clear definition, is that an ARM Mac means the OS or its apps are running on an ARM processor, right? Like it seems like a very simple definition to me that if the OS or the apps run on something other than an Intel chip, then it's an ARM Mac. Like that's clear. So then the question came up. I'm just reiterating what happened on Twitter. What happens if it's a dual CPU system? So what if, just hypothetically, I don't necessarily think this is the case for a lot of, because it's super weird and probably expensive, but let's take the new Mac Pro. Let's say that it comes with an Intel Xeon in it, but it also comes with the Apple ARM Mac CPU in it, and you can run, it has both. Again, I think the answer is, does the OS or its apps, can they run on the ARM processor directly? And if so, I would say that is an ARM Mac.
I feel like in good faith, I could not argue that point away.
Yeah, I feel like we're all on the same page, and I just wanted to clarify that because people were trying to find loopholes. So I think that's our definition.
Because then I could get you a Mac that does both, right?
Lastly, in follow-up, Myke, this is just for me and you. We have a co-host on this show who really likes awards.
Yeah.
I feel like he's very...
It's not that I like them, I deserve them.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like he's like overcoming some trauma in his past where he was passed over.
It is possible.
You know, and this has spilled out into the Relay FM newsletter. There's a new show called Adapt. We talked about it last week where Federico and Ryan are challenging each other to do things on the iPad. It's a great show. And I interviewed the two of them in the Relay FM membership newsletter. And there's just a link in the show notes about one of Federico's answers. Myke, do you want to tell us what this other person wrote?
So the question was, will there be prizes? I know Federico's really into trophies. And Federico says, I like trophies because I deserve them, as other shows on Relay have proven time and time again. I hope that Adapt will allow me to win more trophies than Connected, whose co-hosts have established an alliance against me to prevent me from winning additional trophies. Now,
yes.
I feel like we are entering into a very deep and complicated lore here that I can't comprehend anymore as to how this has occurred.
Well, I believe there is an alliance or a conspiracy
We
against
all
me
have an equal amount of trophies. We all have one
where
each.
Only one was shaped like a toilet, though.
Yeah, and I have that one.
over time
So yeah, exactly.
points were stolen from me over time.
When?
Come on.
When were they?
In previous predictions and in previous contests that we did, points were not assigned to me. And
You know why the points weren't assigned to you, right? Because you got the answer wrong.
Because you didn't deserve them.
Well,
You didn't
that's
earn them.
debatable, and you two have teamed
Two
up.
sides to every story.
You two have teamed up and have colluded with Jason Snell.
No
also, who's
collusion.
part of. Yes, there has been.
Easy.
I feel like we would need a report to assess the situation
Oh
here.
my
Yeah.
God.
Well,
Are you going to be the person to assign the independent report coordinator?
I would like to have, going into WWDC, a special investigator looking into the practices that assign the points and grade the predictions
Okay.
to assure that there will be no collusion.
No collusion.
Sure. Okay.
What could we call it? The Gruber report? Something like that?
We have some big news, gentlemen. Big
Huge
news.
This is actually pretty huge news.
Big news. So this fall, Relay FM will turn 5 years old, which is just, as a side note, completely mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
And we are marking the occasion with a special live show in San Francisco. There is a ticket link in the show notes. This will be on Thursday, August 22nd in San Francisco. It is going to be a podcasting extravaganza. So we're going to have a bunch of Relay hosts there doing some fun stuff. It's not just like a regular Connected or a regular Upgrade. This is going to be just a full blowout of Relay fun times.
Yeah, we're trying to get as many hosts in as we possibly can. We're trying to get as many people involved in the episode as possible. It's going to be the most ambitious crossover event in history. Tickets are on sale. Obviously, space is limited because it's a venue in San Francisco. I'm very, very, very excited about this. We obviously have one big live show still to come before this one, but I am very excited about our 5th anniversary live show. So we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff throughout the rest of this year, I think, to try and celebrate our 5th anniversary, because it's a pretty big deal for us. So we hope that you'll join us in San Francisco on August 22nd. I think this would be one that you wouldn't want to miss. So we're working on some stuff.
We're going to shoot Myke Hurley out of a cannon. It's going to be great.
I'm like, actually, do you know what? I will be the one with a surprise at this show. Maybe. Maybe. I'm working on something. I'll let you know later on if it actually pans out.
Lastly, sort of in this like follow-up topic 0 big news section of the show, today Apple sent out invites to the WWDC keynote. To everyone's surprise, no one's surprise, it is Monday, June 3rd in San Jose, in the conference center there. They're probably going to announce some software, maybe some hardware. We'll see. Maybe a service or two. You think it could be a service?
Maybe the ARM Mac Pro the Myke will need to buy. It's possible.
Maybe the ARM Mac Pro would be possible.
Steven would be the only person happy about that product. Of everybody that wants one.
I would be happy about that, actually.
No, but like of everyone that wants to own one, like Steven will be the only person.
Because it's going to be free.
It's true.
I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you made this promise in public.
Sometimes I get excited.
Well, a little too much, maybe.
So here's the question. Had you been editing that episode, would you have edited that promise out?
No, I would have stayed in. I'm a man of my word.
Good. Good. No, I know you are. I just wanted that on the record.
Much to my detriment.
Just in case. So WWDC will be there. All 3 of us will be, of course, at WWDC all week. We have our live show that Wednesday night. And Federico and I will be at the keynote, which is very exciting.
I'm very pleased for you both.
Thank you. Steven will get... Oh, Steven, you don't drink coffee, do you? I wanted you to experience the terrible WWDC coffee with me.
I'll be holding down the fort, being the only one of us bothering to take any notes from a hotel room somewhere in San Jose. But I'm very, very happy for my co-hosts.
Thank you, Michael.
That they're going to be going, especially Steven, because it's going to be his first Apple event. So no, that's very exciting because he deserves it.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. So we'll see you in San Jose. If you're in San Jose, if you're not there, we won't see you.
If you're not there, what's wrong with you? Really, that's the point. Cool.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Backblaze, the unlimited cloud backup for Macs and PCs that start at just $6 a month. Last time I read a Backblaze ad, I told you about how I lost a bunch of data in college, and it's a true story and it made me sad. So I'm going to tell you about a different story today. A couple of months ago, actually in the fall, in November, I was traveling on a family trip. I was in like rural North Carolina visiting family, and I had brought my laptop and my iPad, but I realized that so something I needed to work on in the evening, and I realized that it was in the downloads folder on my iMac at home, and I'm, hundreds of miles away. And then I remembered that all that stuff gets backed up on Backblaze. So I was able to log into my account and download that file because Backblaze had backed it up from my iMac at home. It was in their service. I could go download it from where I was. Backblaze is so much more than just a backup solution. It's really a safety net when you travel. It definitely saved my bacon on that trip. And you can sign up for a 15-day free trial with no credit card required at backblaze.com/connected. Backblaze backs up documents, music, photos, videos, drawings, projects, everything on your computer that's important to you. And they really know what they're doing. They've backed up over 750 petabytes of data. They host these great blog posts where they show how they build their pods full of hard drives. Like, they do real engineering to make this possible. At 750 million gigabytes, it's incredible. So avoid that looming data disaster. Go to backblaze.com/connected for your unrestricted free trial and to tell them that you heard about them on Connected. That's backblaze.com/connected. Head over there now. Thank you to Backblaze for saving us from countless data disasters and for their support of this show and Relay FM. We've got a couple of new apps we want to talk about. Myke, I know you are a big time tracker. You've been doing it a lot longer than I have. So could you tell us about Timery?
Yeah, I can. I love this application. I'm very happy that it's out now, so people will stop asking me when it's going to come out. This Timery is a third-party time tracking app which uses the service Toggle, which is a time tracking application that that I use and am a fan of, but the Toggle app has always left a lot to be desired.
That's generous. They're not very good.
I'm really trying to be kind. I'm trying my best to be kind. I am a big fan of this application because it does everything that I want. It looks great. It's very simple. It's very fast to start timers. Like, one of the things I like about this app, when you go in to start a timer, the first thing you do is start the timer running before you enter any of the information in, which just feels like the right way around to do things to me. It's made by a developer whose name's Joseph Hribar, who's a super nice guy too. Like, I've been on this beta for quite a few months, and he's been very like accommodating of little features that I think would be good for the application. But as somebody who really believes in and quite heavily time tracks, I have a lot of thoughts about these types of things. But the application is very nice. I like that all of the entries are categorized really well, and I can kind of at a glance get an idea of how much time I'm tracking. I use the widget that it has, the notification center widget, constantly for a couple of things. One, it shows your current timer, and you can stop it from there. It's like a super quick way for me to stop the timer. But you can also have listed there and in other views of the application saved timers. So if you have specific timers with like projects and tags that are very frequent for you, you can set them up so you can quite quickly, like when you first open the application, just fire them off because they're all kind of like templates that you can hit, or they live in the widget. And it also has extensive Siri shortcut support, where you can basically create whatever timer you want, and it can be fired off with shortcuts. And there's a couple of other shortcuts in there too, to like check the current entry, stop the current entry, that kind of stuff. I haven't used the shortcuts too much because, to be honest, like the reason is when I'm doing the work, I'm usually at a device, and so I just set it up on the device.
Yeah, this is my problem with this, or not my problem, but I haven't used them either because if I'm doing work, I'm either at my Mac and I have Toggle running, or I'm on my iPad or my phone with timery. Mm-hmm. So I just open the app and do it. Maybe that's just, months of muscle memory, and I'll like move to using Siri at some point, but it hasn't made a big impact on me yet.
I mean, but this is like maybe part of a larger conversation for the fact that I actually do not ever trigger shortcuts by voice. Ever.
Interesting.
We should probably talk about this at another time. But like I continue to find the experience to be less than reliable. Like I need what I feel like would be constant reliability from that feature, and I feel like I can't get it because Siri too frequently is trying to jump in. Like, for example, this app's name is Timery, right? I think of my toggle timers as timers. Siri does not like me to use the word timer. Siri gets very upset if I use the word timer. And then it's like, how far do I really want to go to change my own mental model for what I'm calling things? And to be honest, it's not far enough, right? Like, I don't want to start thinking about my time tracking and my time tracking timers as like different words, because if I say I set up a specific phrase and I ask Siri for it, and then the HomePod just tells me I don't have any timers running, but what it's doing is looking for food or cook, like the timers that I set for the clock app. You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that is just too frustrating for me, which is probably why I haven't got that far with shortcuts, because a lot of the applications and things that I want to do are things that the HomePod can do natively or Siri can do natively, right? So it's like calendar stuff and email stuff or whatever. And then the nomenclature is too close to what Siri thinks is native stuff. Right? Federico, do you find that? I mean, I'm sure that you probably have like a whole set of words that you use instead. But is what I'm saying...
I do have the word timer in them.
Yeah, you see? Sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. So,
it's the second word. Like, for example,
maybe that's what it is.
I have article timer, and that starts the Mac Stories posts timer that I have. Or I have I guess it depends. I have a mix of them, but I know that at least 5 or 6 of them have the word timer in it. And it's just, I was listening to you both, and I'm the complete opposite. So I work on the iPad, and I have Timery there. And in fact, most of the time it's in slide over. But I think it's just easier for me to just shout at the HomePod and start a timer. And it's relatively fast. It takes a couple of seconds.
Maybe I should look at it again. I mean, honestly, it was kind of just like I was frustrated with it for a while. Like it wasn't giving me exactly what I wanted, and then I just stopped using it. I use shortcuts all the time, but I manually activate them, right? And so, plus I think what it is as well, a lot of the shortcuts that I want to run, we're really kind of pushing into our last topic today already. A lot of the shortcuts that I want to run, they require action from me. So I feel like I can't get into a groove of always wanting to activate my shortcuts by voice because I can't activate them all by voice. If I was to think that, shortcuts can always be Siri because Siri can ask me a question and I can give an answer, I think I would be more inclined to do it, But the fact that like some you can and some you can't, some are like, check it on your phone. It's like, well, I should have just done this in the first place then, shouldn't I? So like I think that kind of disconnect is one of the things that's kept me away from using Siri for shortcuts because it's not a consistent experience as to what I can actually achieve. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of like kept me away from it. But Timer is really good. It is. I mean, genuinely, like if you are interested in time tracking, you should try it anyway, and you should sign up for Toggle. Like this only works with Toggle. This application, it's like a third-party app for this service. But if you are a Toggle user, no question, you should be using this app. Like it is so much better than the Toggle app. Like the one thing it doesn't have is like reports. But how often are you checking those, right? And when you need them, just go to the website anyway because they suck in the iPhone app as it is. So, like, I think that this application is fantastic, and I really, really urge people to try it out. It's free to download and free to try, and it has a subscription which enables a bunch more features. I really, really, really love this application. It's lived on my home screen since like the day I got the first beta. And it has really made like a significant difference in how I've been tracking my time. Like I use this way more than I don't use my shortcuts workflows my shortcuts for this stuff anymore, like the stuff that Federico built.
Wow.
And I've started to replace, like I have some more complicated ones that like set timers and open applications or whatever. And I'm slowly starting to like, and have been for a while, going through and replacing all of those with timery actions instead, because I just prefer the way that the app works, and I think that it is really well made and it's very well focused, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I absolutely love Timery. It has replaced all of my workflows and now shortcuts. As I mentioned, I activate the shortcuts via voice all the time, either on my phone or the watch or one of the many HomePods that I have. I
only have one HomePod as well. Maybe that's one home. I only have HomePods in one room. Like I don't have them in my office, but I could always just ask. Because that's the other thing. I'm sorry. I'm going back to this again. The HomePods are in the other room, and then if I say the Ahoy telephone phrase, even though I then can't hear what it's saying to me properly, but it can hear me, and then my phone won't do it. Anyway, I'm on one today. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But I also, in addition to the voice shortcuts, I also use the Siri shortcuts for Timery as actions, as little action steps, part of my longer custom shortcuts in the Shortcuts app. So, for example, I have a shortcut that I run before I sit down to record a podcast. And this shortcut looks into my calendar, and depending on the event name, which would be Connected or App Stories or Adapt, it starts a different Timery shortcut depending on the podcast that I'm about to record.
I need to do this one. You told me about this before, and like I feel like I have an idea of how you would build it, right? Like just hearing you say that, and I really need to look into that.
Yeah. So I also want to call out the integration with tagging and tasks. These are two separate toggle features. So tags allow you to just tag your timers, and later you can use these tags as filters or just as better organization if you want to use the reports in the web app. And unfortunately, reports and stats are not available yet in Timery. But there's an API for those, so hopefully the developer will implement reports and stats in the future. Tasks are something that not a lot of people know about because it requires a premium Toggle account. If you just use Toggle for free, the task feature will be completely hidden from Timery as well. But if you're a premium Toggle user, you will be able to organize your projects with tasks which are effectively like sub-projects. So for example, I have Mac Stories, and using the toggle task functionality, I can have Mac Stories articles or Mac Stories admin. It's a way to break down a project into multiple areas, and with Timery you can completely manage those tasks, and you can create saved timers for a specific project and a specific subtask. It's really well done. And yeah, I guess there's one feature that John called out in our review on Mac Stories, which is something that the Toggle web app for desktop computers does very well, is the ability to group related timers. So for example, if during the day you've been working on and off on different projects, the Toggle web app aggregates all the timers belonging to the same project into one condensed view, and there's a button on the right that you can press to expand all of those timers. And it's just a way to condense all of the related timers into a more compact list. And I would like to see a similar grouping in Timery as well, because right now Timery only lists your timers in reverse chronological order, so from the latest to the oldest. But I would like to see the grouping like the Toggle web app for desktop, because for some reason the Toggle mobile app also does not do grouping.
Because the Toggle mobile app basically does nothing.
Yeah.
And what it does, it just continues to do it in varying ways of bad. I've never known an application
Hey, give
like
them
this.
some credit. They launched the iPad version a mere 2 weeks ago.
They did. Well, I mean, at least it finally exists, but don't need it because Timery is universal.
Yes, of course, and it's very good, and it's one of, I'm going to call it, it's going to be for sure one of the best app launches of the year in 2019.
Damn!
I mean, it's super awesome, and we all use it at Mac Stories. It's very good.
It's really good.
Yeah, so hopefully now, Myke,
Just want a Mac version. Mac version.
Just wait till the end of the year, no problem.
This is perfect for Marzipan.
It'll run really well on my ARM Mac Pro in December.
It will. It will run natively on your ARM Mac Pro.
Hopefully, Myke, now in the Cortex subreddit, people will stop asking, when's the time tracking app that Myke and Gray keep mentioning?
I'm not kidding. It's switched over now. Now people are asking me for Android versions of replacements. It's like, I can't help you. You know I can't help you. Like, if you listen, I can't help you, right? Like, I have nothing for you.
Super glad it's here. But it's not the only new app we want to talk about this week. Our friend and sometimes enemy, Casey Liss,
Frenemy of the show.
He's not my enemy.
No, Casey's a lovely man. He smells like cantaloupe when you're up close to him. It's very strange. It's kind of comforting.
What is
cantaloupe? That? Like a melon. It's like an orange melon.
Oh, I thought it was like an animal, like an antelope. Anyway, Casey. Yes.
Yeah. Well, poor Casey.
So he's been talking about this on ATP and Analog for a while now, and it's finally here. It's called Vignette, and it's like the perfect iOS app that takes a very narrow set of problems and just executes very well on top of them. So the issue is we all probably in our contacts have people that we text with all the time or talk to all the time, and they don't have a photo in our contacts. It's just a gray circle with their initials over it. And look, I don't want to live like that. I want to live looking at people's faces. And in the past, before this app, that meant you have to go around to Twitter and find people's pictures. Maybe you took a picture of them at a wedding and you drop it into contacts on the Mac, but then it beach balls and crashes because it's contacts on the Mac. And it was very difficult to keep your contact database photos updated. Casey's app is designed to solve that. So it's an iPhone app. It skims your local contacts database. It does not upload them anywhere. It does not log into any of your accounts. It's all local on the device, which I love. So there are other services like this, like on the web. It's like you got to do some things in your contacts you don't want to do. This app's all local, and it searches for the people in your database. So it looks at Gravatar, which is where the bulk of mine came from. someone's email address is in a contact record. They use that email address on Gravatar. It pulls their photo in, but it can also look at their Twitter profile, Instagram, or Facebook. If you have their links to their social media accounts in your records of your contacts, and I don't have any of those. Most people probably don't. So Gravatar was the big fallback for me. But it goes out and fetches those images and then gives you a list saying, okay, I found 32 people with updated images, and it lets you select, I want to override all of them. I just want to override a select few. So for instance, I have some people in my contacts that I very carefully chose the photo that I have for them in my contacts list. And it's not necessarily the one they use on Twitter or elsewhere. And so I could just skip over those people and use the photo that I already had. And then you hit apply, and it applies them, and they sync everywhere, and it's awesome.
Yeah, this is like the perfect example of you have an idea, which is a thing that people actually want to fix, and then you make an app that perfectly fixes it. It's just like, I think Casey did a really great job, and obviously he's a very close friend, but I'm actually really proud of him because I think he's done a very, very good job with this application, and I think that it is worth people's time, especially because you can download the app for free and do the scan of your contacts, and you only pay when you apply the features. You pay, and then you can apply the updates, and then you can then do it for as many times as you want from that point. But you can actually see, it's like a try before you buy. You can actually see if it's going to be of a benefit to you. Because if you have a lot of friends who don't have like a Gravatar, and you haven't put that information into the contact database, like their Twitter account or their Facebook account or whatever, it's not going to find anything. So I think he did a really good job with the way that in which he has done things, because you can work out if this app's going to be of any use to you before you buy it. I think he's done I'm very proud of him. I think he's done a great job. We recorded an episode of Analog yesterday, which was fun because I always like talking to people just before something happens, because you can kind of get those raw feelings. So if you're interested in what it was like for him to make the app, and then what it felt for him the day before he released it, you can go and listen to episode 157 of Analog. But this app is definitely worth your time as well, because it has actually genuinely solved the thing that I wanted solved. So it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good app, and I was surprised how many of my contacts were without profile pictures. And it's such a simple idea, and it's been realized so well. And even the thought of adding a custom field for Instagram to the contact card, that was genius. So I should also point out that I'm only friends with folks who make great apps. So the disclaimer of saying, well, Casey is a friend. Of course he's a friend because he makes great apps. I cannot be friends with developers who make terrible apps. It's like for example, like all of my friends are handsome and beautiful. Like I cannot be friends with ugly people.
Yes.
So I have very high standards for my friends, and my friends make great stuff. So
right.
I have filters for my personal life. And this is one of them. So it's only natural that this is a great app because it's my friend. So if it sucked, I would have told Casey, this app sucks and you're no longer my friend.
Yeah, if one of your friends makes a bad app.
Oh, I get upset. I get real upset. Like, what have you done?
You have to break up with them.
You ruined everything.
I was working on a project a while back with another person, and he came up to me with something that was ugly and terrible. Like, I basically told him, why would you bring this to my attention? This is a waste of time. Do you know me at all? And eventually we figured it out. I have very high standards for everything. So,
yep.
I'm sorry. This is just who I am.
Oh, okay. Wasn't expecting that look into your psyche, but here we are.
Hey, look, as long as you know yourself,
All right, we have some more stuff to talk about, but let me tell you about our second sponsor, and that is FreshBooks. If you're a freelancer or you have a side project, imagine what it would be like to save 192 hours. That is, it's 8 full days. And that's if you work 24 hours a day, which you shouldn't do. We don't recommend that. But our friends at FreshBooks can help you save that much time with their simple cloud accounting software. By simplifying tasks like invoicing, tracking expenses, and getting paid online, FreshBooks has drastically reduced the time it takes for over 10 million people to deal with their paperwork. FreshBooks automates things like late payment email reminders, so you don't have to spend time keeping up with who's paid you and who's late and sending emails and then it being weird that you sent an email. The FreshBooks system just takes care of all of that, chasing those late payments and giving you more time to do what's important. And when you do email a client an invoice, FreshBooks can show you whether they've seen it or not. So you're not playing a guessing game if your client's lying to you or not if they saw your invoice. You know, they know, and so you can just talk like adults and get paid on time. If you're listening to this and you're not using FreshBooks yet, now is the time to try it. We've used it at Relay FM from day one, before they were a sponsor. We're coming up on invoice 2,000.
I'm going to send that invoice.
And I'm telling you, I'm going to send that invoice.
It's going to be mine.
And it's going to be great.
Mine. Thank you. It'll be mine.
Well, we'll see how that goes. But I can't tell you how much time it's saved us as a company, allowing us to focus on what really matters in our business. FreshBooks is offering an unrestricted 30-day free trial for listeners of this show with no credit card required. All you need to do is go to freshbooks.com/connected and enter the code CONNECTED in the How Did You Hear About Us section. I'd like to thank FreshBooks for their support of this show and Relay FM. MacBook Pros. We're going to chant. You ready? MacBook Pros. You going to chant? Come on.
Do we have to talk about this?
Yes.
Is it important?
Yeah.
I have to talk about it. I mean, if you want to get a coffee or something.
Apple released a revision to their laptop line yesterday.
So just to confirm, this is important.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. No, just cool.
It is.
All right.
You can take a break.
Okay.
Right? Because you've got to talk a lot next.
Yeah, go get a coffee. Mm-hmm. Take a walk.
I don't need... Yeah, okay. I was just double checking.
We can just call you back. Yes, okay. So Apple... for the last several years now, Apple has sort of cleared the decks before WWDC with announcements that aren't going to be in the keynote. I think sometimes they use these to like signal expectations. Whatever the case is this year, there are some new MacBook Pros. So very quickly, the 13-inch with touch bar got a spec bump to faster CPUs in the base model and faster turbo speed. So same machine, same 16 gig RAM limit, but faster Intel CPUs. Still the same generation, the 8th generation, but the 15-inch is really where most of the attention was placed with new 6-core and for the first time 8-core 9th generation Intel CPUs. So the 2399 model is 6-core i7, $2,800 will get you an 8-core i9. And you can configure an 8-core i9 with up to 5 gigahertz turbo boost. Apple says this is the fastest MacBook Pro they've ever shipped. It includes, of course, options for the Vega graphics that they added towards the end of the year last year. So in July, they had a big update to the MacBook Pro. That's where mine came from. They had a release in the fall with new GPUs. Now they have these. I totally love that Apple is spec bumping this computer as they can. You know, there was, for such a long time there, it felt like their eye was off the ball with these sorts of updates. This is, Federico, to your point, this is not that necessarily that exciting of a MacBook Pro update unless you just really wanted 8 cores. I mean, if you're really pushing a MacBook Pro, this is good news. But for most people, including myself, this isn't going to make me go out and radically change my setup. But it's a signal that Apple is willing to update these machines as it can, you know, every 10 months, 12 months, somewhere in there. So I think that's awesome. But I do think it raises some questions, and I've got a handful of them. One, will we ever see a 15-inch without a dedicated GPU again? So in the 2015 generation and before, the baseline 15-inch you could get with just the Intel integrated graphics. And as Marco talked about sort of in that time, and as I agreed with, that was kind of the machine to get if you wanted a bigger screen, but you valued battery life and heat, because the dedicated GPU runs a little hotter. Obviously, has an impact on battery life. And if you didn't need the GPU, but you just wanted the screen size, that was a really good option. And that has gone away with the Thunderbolt 3 machines, and who knows if we'll ever see it again. But it's kind of just an asterisk on any time they update these. But what's more interesting is what is going on with the 12-inch MacBook and the non-touch bar MacBook Pro, which Federico lovingly calls the MacBook Escape.
No, I do not. I came back from my walk to say that I do not.
I ran.
The Verge called it the MacBook Escape in their article. So
well, The Verge is wrong. The Verge is not God.
I'm just saying, that was Marco's nickname, so that's pretty awesome. It's made it into like mainstream.
Well, we're gonna have to revise this friend situation with Marco then, if he insists on using nicknames.
Wait a second.
Wait, does that override? He makes a good app. Does that override his app?
See, that's the problem. He makes a great app, but he uses nicknames, so they sort of cancel out.
Interesting.
I guess we'll have to establish.
So he's on a level playing field.
Yeah. Well,
so now I guess it's all about how attractive you find him.
well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I know he's been working out. So we'll check it out with
the beard looks good.
Okay.
He's a dog person. So by default, he wins. So if you're a dog person, that defeats all the other factors. So
you can be not good looking.
Yes.
Make a bad app and use nicknames, but if you have a dog, you're all good.
We can have some kind of acquaintance. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be fine. But if you're non-good looking, make a bad app and use nicknames, and also are a cat person, just don't even walk near me. Yeah.
What is your email address?
It's on my website.
Okay, great. Cool.
So if you please send me feedback. I really want to hear what you think about my weird and
grading
twisted
system
psyche.
For human people.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about this very important computer. Yes.
Something.
GPUs.
Yes. So this is now the second release. This is now the second release where these two machines have not gotten an update. They are the same as they were in 2017, which means the old keyboard, old CPUs. And my thought is that the non-touch bar machine is only there for a price point. The touch bar, 13 inches, is pretty expensive. It also feels sort of irrelevant in the era of the new MacBook Air. Like the Air kind of fills that price point. And so do you need a MacBook Pro there? Is it just legacy? What's the deal? I still think, as I predicted, or it was a non-graded pick. At some point, I said in our predictions that I think this machine will go away. I still think that. I think that case is even stronger after this lack of updating.
It makes sense too that like if that 16-inch rumored amazing MacBook Pro was probably never going to replace either of these. Like it would go in at the top end, like the Retina MacBook Pro it did, right?
Oh, of course.
And so then the 13 with Touch Bar becomes just the entry MacBook Pro.
The base, sure, and yes, it's like whatever it is, $14.99 or $15.99, but it's So the rumor of the this high end like 16-inch MacBook Pro with a new design, I think you've really hit the nail on the head of it, if and when that thing comes to pass. If it's at WWDC or if it's later, I think it will be exactly how they introduced the Retina MacBook Pro in 2012, where they had the same MacBook Pros that they had. In fact, they revved them, I think, in that same day. And they said, hey, and now we have a new model at the top of the line. This is like the fancy one. All computers will be like this, but for now, it's only the special one. And then over time, it trickled down, and now they all have Retina displays and look like that. So I think they will follow that pattern again this time. The 12-inch MacBook, I think, is the more interesting question here. Like, say the non-touch bar just goes away, whatever. It failed. The MacBook Air is here. The MacBook Air is awesome. You should get that instead. The 12-inch, I think, still does have a place. Now, I still think it's probably too expensive, but I do think that there are people who value the thinness and lightness and portability above all else. And I really have come to understand this better in the last couple of weeks. I needed a second. Normally in the summer, I install the macOS beta on my MacBook Pro, and I leave my iMac alone because it's my production machine. But I have a lot of travel this summer. I've got several like personal trips. I have WWDC, and of course now we can talk about it. I have this trip to San Francisco in August for our live show. I'm unwilling to run a macOS beta on a machine that I need for those sorts of trips. 'Cause I got to record shows live on stage. I got to stream audio. And like, that's not the best thing to do on a macOS beta. And so I was thinking like, well, how am I going to run the macOS beta? Do I do it on an external drive? And then I remembered I have a 2015, the original one-port MacBook. It was my wife's machine for a long time. She has a new Air. And so I got it up off the shelf and put Mojave on it, and I don't want to use that machine. It's slow and the keyboard is bad and one port is dumb. But the size is sort of intoxicating. I can see why people really like the thinness and lightness. So I've kind of come around on this machine existing because it's so portable. I mean, it's like nothing else in the Mac line. Even the MacBook Air that she has now feels way bigger and heavier than this thing. So I think there's still room for it to exist. Maybe they're holding off because it's going to be the first ARM Mac, as a lot of people have predicted. Maybe it's that they just haven't put the new Intel CPU in it. I do believe there are Core M processors they could use, but they just haven't gotten around to it for whatever reason. So that's kind of the shifting ground of the MacBook Pro is still like a problem. Like it's still unclear where these machines, how they fit together. But if you want a 15-inch, now seems like a good time to buy it. We do need to talk about the keyboards though. So the 2019 machines have a keyboard, and Apple says that they have changed the material in the butterfly mechanism in a way that should substantially reduce issues that some users have seen with key sticking and debris, and we all know that story. I guess we'll see if it works. This is now like the 4th iteration of this keyboard, depending on how you count them. Apple's still calling it the 3rd generation keyboard because it has the membranes. So like whatever. You can also count it as the 5th generation keyboard if you really like count very specifically. So whatever. The number doesn't matter. They keep reworking this keyboard, and we'll see if it happens to fix it or if it doesn't. But what's really interesting is the keyboard repair program has been expanded to now cover all butterfly keyboards. So they lumped in the 2018 MacBook Pro and the 2018 MacBook Air, like we have in my household, and the brand new 2019 model. So if you buy a new $3,000 15-inch MacBook Pro tomorrow at the Apple Store with a 8-core CPU in it, it is covered under the keyboard repair program.
Yeah, and they also made like a lot of statements to some outlets that they are doing a lot to, I find this so funny, really, to reduce the wait times and stuff like that, how long it takes to get things fixed if you do have a problem. It's kind of funny, right? Like Apple say, and like there's a great quote from Jason Snell's article where he's like, while Apple is quick to say that the vast majority of the MacBook Pro customers haven't experienced any keyboard issues, the company still keeps tweaking this design. And it's like, because Apple seem to like really want to talk about the fact that they don't get that many people with these problems, but yet at the same time they're extending the whole keep like the replacement program to everyone. They're making great strides at trying to like fix it. If you go in with a 3rd generation keyboard, they will upgrade it to this new material model, right? Like it's like, I mean, you say what you're saying and what you're doing, they don't really match, and it's like, okay, it still may be a small amount of people, but it's clearly more than before, right? Because you're having to go to all this trouble.
Right. I want to be clear because we glossed over it. It seems like the 2018 models will get the new 2019 keyboards. If you have an older one, you're not going to get this keyboard. So it's very limited in the changeover. My feeling is that it may make it better, but I think more important to Apple at this point is like the damage control angle. And look, when I bought my 2018, I got Apple Care on it because I get Apple Care on my computers. But, I've heard from a lot of people and seen a lot of tweets and emails of people like, I feel like I bought Apple Care just because of the keyboard. And now I guess it's sort of a sign of Apple saying, we're going to take care of you no matter what with this keyboard issue. And I think that's good. I still don't know if it's fixed or if people should trust it. I will say that my 2018 has been mostly okay. The space bar has gotten sticky twice, but compressed air has cleaned it out. No keys have broken off like on my 2016. Time will tell. And until then, Apple seems willing to do what it can to help the customers with this machine. Now, the thing they could do to help them the most is to have a new keyboard, but clearly that's not the time for that yet. So here we are, new MacBook Pros, slightly new keyboard, extended keyboard repair program. It's interesting they're doing it now. I guess they're kind of saying that, hey, if they had done this at WWDC, a bigger story during the conference would be the keyboards, and now this has its own news cycle and it'll be gone by the time that the keynote comes around. So I see why they did it now, but it's a little bit of a bummer that it's not completely solved.
What do you think about the rumor of the new MacBook Pro? Do you think this makes it more likely, less likely, or no different?
I don't think it makes it any different. I still think they could do that in 2 weeks in San Jose and say, hey, look, there's this new high-end MacBook Pro. It's all fancy and new. It's obviously more expensive, more powerful, whatever, new design. I think that's still totally on the table for WWDC. I don't think this makes it less likely. Okay. So we'll see. I don't know how likely it is. I don't feel like, say that I was 30% sure that it was coming. I don't think that number's changed for me because of this. But they can, if they do that path that we talked about a second ago about this is a new machine like the Retina MacBook Pro was, and eventually its stuff will trickle down. They could really do that at any point, I think, and be okay.
Keyboards and laptops.
I'd love never to talk about this again, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. All right. I'm going to tell everybody about Text Expander. Myke, do you want to call Federico and get him back? Because I know he checked out during.
Yeah, I'll send a carrier pigeon his way.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Text Expander from our friends at Smile. Text Expander lets you insert words, phrases, forms, templates, and more with just a couple of key clicks everywhere you type. You don't have to be in the Text Expander app or their weird floating palette. Anywhere you're typing, you can use Text Expander. You can take control of your time and productivity by letting Text Expander handle your repetitive typing tasks. So if you have language that you send out to customers often or something that you end up typing into a form all the time at work, you can automate that with Text Expander and get some time back. The brand new Text Expander 6.5 is now available on the Mac, and Text Expander 2.0 is available on Windows. Both new versions are supporting a new visual editor for snippets. This makes it really easy to see and edit snippet fill-ins, dates, and date math. So many of my snippets involve dates, and now it's really easy to build those. You can do nested snippets and much more.
Yeah, I just actually built a few of these this week, and it was way easier than ever before. Like, I was really pleased with it. Like, to just add in the date stuff was really nice. I like that a lot.
And if you love Text Expander and you want to tell people about it, you can join their affiliate program to earn a little something extra when people sign up. And if you're like me, always looking for ways to become more productive, again, Text Expander lets you take care of those repetitive phrases and paragraphs unbelievably fast. You could type an entire paragraph in just a second. It's like a superpower. I've used Text Expander for so long on my Macs and iOS devices. Using a computer without it, I can't even comprehend it. It's so built into my workflows. Simple things like dates and time, all the way up through drop-in forms. So I have this task I do every couple of weeks where I pay people for Relay, and I need to put their names in a form, and it has to be like spaced and typed exactly correctly. And I have a Text Expander form for that. I do my snippet, I get a drop-down menu, I pick the name, and I hit OK. So I don't have to worry about copying and pasting or typoing somebody's name. Visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more about Text Expander. Our thanks to Text Expander from Smile for their support of this show and Relay FM.
So, Federico, you published the article that you've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, and I think probably in essence the best way to describe it, the magnum opus to working on the iPad right now, right? Like this is everything. This is what, if you want to work on the iPad right now, this is the situation that we are in the middle of 2019. So I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit, well, we all want to talk to you a little bit about the article and kind of where it came from, and then I have some comments on the content itself.
Okay.
It was kind of funny because how many words? This is a big one. It's like 50,000 words or something,
This
right?
is 48,000, 49 almost, 1,000 words. It's bigger than my iOS 12 review.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, really?
Yes.
Wow, it was really funny because you sent this to us like a few days ago so we could read it beforehand. And, it took me quite a while. But it was kind of funny, like Stephen was just like, oh, great. And then he popped in later on and he was like, oh, that was really good. I read it. And it was like 90 minutes later. And I'd gotten through a quarter in the same amount of time. It was just so heartbreaking.
I'm a very fast reader. It disappoints my wife as well. So sometimes like we're reading something together, I'm like, turn the page. Oh,
that's the worst. I'm one of those people that like I hear my voice in my head when I read, which you obviously don't because you would not be able to deal with it.
Actually, I hear your voice in my head when I read. It's very strange.
You hear it faster than I do then. Yes, it takes me quite a while, but I read through it. Oh, it was really good. But I kind of... A feeling that I got, though, while reading the article was I just assumed that when you set out to start this project, it probably wasn't the scope that it ended up being.
Very good assumption. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why exactly I feel that, but it just, well, maybe one, like, probably not the best time of the year for you to be writing such a huge article, considering you've got to do it again starting in 2 weeks. But
okay, I get that. Like, why would you want to do this now? But it is true that it started as a more limited article, but the scope grew quickly. So it's not like suddenly 2 weeks ago I realized, I've been writing too much. So I'm gonna talk about this entire process in the weekly newsletter this Friday. But basically, I started thinking about wanting to have at least 2 big stories on the website before WWDC in February. And I just started saving some notes, some ideas, basically having like a super simple outline. And initially I wanted to do an iPad story and an Apple Watch story. And both of them, those ideas, those notes that I had, they did not have the scope of, this major iOS review like story. I kept those notes for like a month, so I kept thinking about those ideas. And then it was in late March when I decided, realistically speaking, I'm not going to be able to do 2 stories, and I'm going to focus on this iPad one. And I guess that it should have a bigger scope than what I initially set out to do. For example, it was not supposed to include accessories. It was not supposed to include the bridge keyboard and working with external displays. It was not supposed to include scriptable and JavaScript automation. So all those elements were supposed to be like separate posts that I wanted to have on Mac Stories, and realizing that I'm not going to be able to do 2 stories, so I just want to do one, and I want to make sure that it leaves an impression. That forced me, and that happened during the mind mapping process, that forced me to reconsider the scope of the story and say, okay, maybe there's a way that I can expand and still have it feel like a single cohesive story instead of a bunch of sort of disconnected posts. So I spent a few days in the mind map trying to make sense of it all, and there were still a few sections that got cut. There was a section about the Apple Pencil. There was a section about iPad apps that have a 3-column layout. Both of them were cut. But yeah, it started as a more simpler thing. Like I was just gonna talk about multitasking, file management, and wishes for iOS 13. But then I realized, I'm gonna be able to do just one story because we were also launching other projects and all of that. But also, you mentioned, why would you want to do this before WWDC? You're gonna have to write a long article again in a few weeks. That is true, but I realized I want to go to WWDC with an article that maybe people can read during the trip to San Jose, and I wanted to make sure that I will have something that people will keep thinking of at WWDC. Like, have people go to San Jose with this article on their minds, and to sort of have one final update, because I know that iOS 13 is going to change things, right, for the iPad, and I didn't want all my experiments and all my setup changes and all my research go to waste. So I wanted to have like one final update, one final sort of like State of the Union type of article before WWDC, so that people would keep thinking of that, so that maybe they could draw some comparisons between my article and what ends up being in iOS 13. But also, I wanted this is effectively for me an investment in my sanity going forward, because in my iOS 13 review, I will not have to spend as much time on offering historical context for this is how file management used to be, or this is how multitasking used to be, because I've already done the work in May and April. So that's why.
Does this feel like a new annual story? Or is this like you wanted to catch everybody up and then that's that?
Yeah, not an annual thing. I I've done iPad stories before. I've done one in 2014 with the iPad Air 2, and I did one in 2016 for the first year of the iPad Pro, I think. I don't see myself doing an iPad State of the Union like this every year. Maybe every couple of years. I don't know if I would do a story of this scope again. There's only so much you can say about, like, here's why I use the iPad, and I said I don't want to repeat myself every couple of years. I'm going to talk about this later. If you accept the fact that I like to work on the iPad, well, this is it. This is why. I cannot see myself in 2021 or something saying again, well, it was 2012 when I was doing chemo, and that's why I started using the iPad. Like, it's not a story that I want to tell every couple of years.
Yeah.
I think you did it justice by using the review layout on the site, because there's just so much here. Reading it as a flat blog post would have been difficult, but I think it's nice because it's broken up, that say that multitasking gets a big overhaul in a couple weeks, or shortcuts get some amazing overhaul in 5 years. You've built it for your use case of referring to it in the future, that you can point people to a direct section and say, this is where you need to go if you want the background. And I think it deserves this sort of fancy layout because it is such an incredible piece of work. The animations are amazing. You guys talked to Brian, who helped you with the animations on App Stories this week. People should go check that out. But it feels, as a reader, like the big story that it is. And I like that you've sort of put a flag in the ground saying this is where we are with iOS 12 up to this point. Because clearly you believe that iOS 13 has the ability to change a bunch of this stuff, and that hopefully there's a lot of these complaints and issues in here just won't be a problem in 2 weeks. But even if they're not, it's sort of a capturing a moment in time with where you are with it. And even if things don't change in 2 weeks, they will hopefully change in the future. And I think that's kind of important when considering a platform that's still as dynamic as iOS on the iPad.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I mean, even if iOS 13 ends up being a major disappointment for the iPad, there's still this article. It's still going to be valid. But one of the, you mentioned capturing a moment in time. One of the things that is always difficult for me is to strike a balance between what is personal and what can be also relatable for other people. Like, when I'm writing a personal story like this one, it's about my usage of the iPad. Am I writing it for me, or am I writing it for other people? And of course, I want to make sure that other people, that readers, can get something out of it. So those sections that I cut, where they felt to me a little too personal, like I was writing them just as a personal research exercise, and they were not something that I felt that readers could get some value out of. And so striking this balance of, for example, the podcasting setup from the chapter 5, the external accessories, that is incredibly personal. And in the sense that it's the setup that I like, that works for me, that I do not recommend to other people because I wrote as much in the story. But it underlines a bigger point of how does the iPad Pro work with external USB and audio accessories in the context of the USB-C port in the 2018 iPad Pro? And the answer is, it's pretty terrible, but still it kind of works for me. And so that, despite the extremely personal nature, it felt like a good example. So that really was the when I was working on the notes and the mind map before I started writing, going through all the sections and trying to apply this filter of, is this something that I'm going to have fun writing about, but also, is this going to be useful in the context of, does it prove a bigger point? Does it fit the underlying theme of the story? And if it did not, then it got cut. So,
yeah, I really like the conclusion. there was like one line that really resonated with me in a way that I wasn't expecting. So you were kind of talking about the fact that when Steve Jobs introduced the iPad, it was referred to as like this third device, right? That like your iPhone is great for this and your Mac is great for this, but sometimes wouldn't it be nice if each of them had a bit of each other and there could be this device in the middle? And it was like, oh, here's the third device. So you say today the iPad Pro is my laptop, the iPhone is my pocket computer, and the Mac is the third device that's better at specific tasks. I didn't really realize that that's kind of where I am, but it is where I am. And it's my own personal use cases for these devices that has led me to this position. But it is kind of funny to see that, like, you know, nearly 10 years later, that the idea of the third device for some people has changed. And that's kind of where we are. And I really, really heavily resonate with that.
Yeah, I'm pleased that you like that. And it's sort of... it plays into this theme, this idea that there's some people out there who believe that certain design decisions are sacred. They should never change, and whatever Steve Jobs decided 10 years ago should be forever. And you see this in UI design, you see this in hardware design, and I think that's a sad outlook. That's a sad way, and really a limited way to look at not just technological progress, but at life, because time moves on and things change, and the iPad maybe started as a way to read a book or read the New York Times or just chill on the sofa and browse the web. But it is so obvious that over time it has become so much more, and not because Myke, Hurley, and Federico are making this up or are sort of trying to make this a trend.
This is not propaganda that we're attempting to spread.
Apple is selling an iPad called the iPad Pro. Like, I couldn't make this up if I wanted to. It exists. It's a thing that Apple is selling, and we're just following the evolution of this product. And so I was concerned about using that analogy, or sort of trying to flip that quote on its head and say the iPad is now the notebook and the Mac is the third device. Because I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but I try whenever possible not to make people upset. And while this may be, I say a bunch of silly things on this show, but I feel like listeners know that I'm kidding, I hope. For example, I can be friends with non-good-looking people. Like,
No, everyone, you should see what he's been texting us during this show. It's horrific, the things he's been saying.
I feel like listeners can separate on a podcast. I feel like listeners can separate sort of the character that I play sometimes with the real person that's doing the podcast. But when I write something, that is taken like, it gets passed around and people take screenshots and they quote sections on Reddit. You know how it goes. It's easier for something that you write to be used against you. And so I was concerned about that quote. But the more I thought about it, the better it felt, and it felt true. And then when I shared it with you, you told me this is true for me as well. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm just going for it. So I'm glad that it worked.
What is the other point that you wanted to make about this stuff?
Well, I guess it comes with the territory of whenever I publish these stories, there's a subset of people in this community, the community of folks who read Mac stories and maybe they're in Fireball and maybe listen to a few relay shows, that they believe that I and others are on some kind of payroll by Apple, and that we're just spreading propaganda, like you said, or that it's in our interest to write positive things about Apple, because I genuinely believe those people believe we get paid, which is not true, obviously. I get paid because I'm fortunate enough to have sponsors and subscribers. But it's one thing to believe that, and it's totally fair. But, I was taking a look on Reddit and Twitter, and there's some comments that really make you think, like, what is it the image that people have of what I do? And just scrolling through the Reddit thread, I was called a snake oil seller.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of all the other things. Yeah, like this idea that the iPad is terrible. Therefore, if you write about working on the iPad, you are writing false information because all you care about is being considered by Apple for whatever reason they believe, whatever crazy theory they have. And also, there's the fact that every time I read about the iPad, and I make sure to convey this point. I'm not trying to prove that the iPad is better than the Mac for everybody. I'm trying to prove that it's better for me, and that maybe by sharing my experiences, there's going to be other people who can find that useful. But I never try to say Apple should stop selling Macs or the Mac is done, goodbye macOS. The entire point of this article is that I believe, and I literally wrote this and quoted this and used pull quotes throughout the story to highlight this point, is that I believe there are certain ideas that macOS got right decades ago, and that Apple should maybe take a look at those ideas again and reconsider them for iOS. But there's still a few folks who tweet at me and share comments on Reddit. This is ridiculous.
Well, the trolls can't be bothered to actually read what you write. So the type of people who are going to throw grenades on Twitter aren't the type to actually take what you say seriously. They just want to troll. So,
look, I'm used to this, right? I've been doing this for 10 years. All these, being called names. There's folks who call me pathetic or ridiculous, and I wish I was kidding, but this is actual. These are actual words that people use for an article. First of all, I think it's sad that not for me, it's sad for you that instead of you want to criticize my work, fine, but why would you need to call anybody, not just me, names on the internet? It's really not classy or elegant. It's really not personally speaking, I don't think it's a good it's a good way to live your life, to call other people pathetic or ridiculous. But I think it's what saddens me is that for some people I am not able to convey the fact that I genuinely believe in what I write. And it's that some people always see the conspiracy behind it. They believe that I'm doing this because Apple is paying me, and I wish there was a way for me. And I wish there was a way for me to fix those people, to say, why don't you believe me? Not because I need them, but because it makes me sad that they think that of me, right? It's I don't know. Maybe I'm not able to convey my feelings here, but it's just I find it sad that this is generally what I believe in and what I'm passionate about. I guess it's just impossible to please everybody. And there's always going to be, especially once you put your work on the internet, there's always going to be folks, from 9-year-olds to, old people who've been using computers for 50 years. It's always going to be somebody that doesn't like you for whatever reason. That is fine, but it still saddens me to an extent. So, wow, that felt good to say this. Yeah.
But let's not focus on that, though, right? That's not what this is about. You've produced something which is very interesting and I think quite important.
I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with what I did. Yeah.
Good, you should be. I mean, it's wonderful. So I just don't want you to one, obviously you shouldn't think of it that way, but I don't want our listeners to think that that's what this is about, this conversation.
No. Yeah. Totally. And I
people
should say
read this thing.
The vast majority of people have been extremely kind and the response. I was not expecting to have the kind of response that an iOS review would get in September when there's more attention and people have been looking forward to that in May, which is incredible. So I'm extremely happy for the overall reception and response from readers and everybody else. So it's just, those people, they're still on my mind sometimes, but I'm very happy, honestly. Yes, I feel very good.
Good. You should be. You deserve that. It's an incredible piece. It's obviously linked in the show notes. Take some time, go through it, and you will enjoy it. For somebody like me, who I am primarily on the Mac, I went through it and downloaded 3 or 4 apps and a bunch of shortcuts. Because as you were talking about things like, oh, that'd be great if I could solve this or do it this way. And I think the big example for me is the local storage deal. So in the Files app, there is on my iPad storage, and then there's a bunch of folders for apps that populate things there. But as a user, I can't put things there. And there's a third-party app that basically fixes that. It's like, oh, this is something I need right now. And now it's on both my devices. So it's not just Federico talking about Federico things. Like, there is real everyday use, like tips and things in here that are useful to all sorts of people. So thank you for improving the stuff I'm doing on the iPad by letting me read it. Anything else to talk about this? You're still going to do your iOS 13 review. Is there anything you're going to take from this into that review? I know you mentioned that now you feel like you don't have to do as much backstory in the review, but are there certain things that came up in this article that you're going to make sure to touch on again in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, all the core chapters, so file management and working with an external keyboard and shortcuts, all of those will be key areas of interest in the review. I guess something that I took away from working on this is that maybe the review layout could use some modernization on the website. We've been using this special layout for the iOS 11 review, iOS 12 review, and now this story. So there's probably a few. I don't want to change it. Like, I don't want to have an entirely new design, but I would like to do some improvements this summer if we have time. So there's a few things that I would like to improve. I'm definitely going to do the 3D rendered animation again. Yeah, working with Brian has been awesome, and the freedom of having 3D models instead of sort of static 2D templates in Sketch or Photoshop has been so much better.
Yes, please.
We can try
every
all
time.
sorts of crazy ideas, and maybe even increasing the output of those images, not just to use them for the initial page of a chapter, but maybe more throughout a chapter. That would be nice. I guess the entire setup that I had for writing this story, so using IA Writer in combination with Working Copy and Scriptable, has been awesome. Thanks to Brett Terpstra, he made a very custom, very extremely specific template for IA Writer that allowed me to preview the story with the same special layout that I would get on Mac Stories on the website. I was able to preview the table of contents navigation, the chapter images, everything inside of IA Writer. So that saved me so much time, and just being able to manage my screenshots locally with Scriptable and iCloud Drive and IA Writer all together, it was incredible. So the entire writing setup, I'm glad that it took me a couple of weeks to get it right, but that worked extremely well. I was able to upload basically 150 screenshots in a couple of hours in one afternoon.
I mean, but then this is the other part. Is like, you now don't need to spend the first 2 weeks of June working out what your setup's going to be for your review this year.
Yeah, which is also going to be super useful.
Wow.
It's a big benefit, because that it always takes me a couple of weeks to say, what am I going to use this time for research and all of that. Also moving from Evernote to Apple Notes before working on this story also helped. I was very surprised that I would
just help my general mental state.
Yes. Yeah. No. Totally. But really, to give you a timeline, I basically started writing on April 14, and I was done in 2 weeks with the writing. So 50,000 words done in 2 weeks, and then three more weeks of editing. So 2 weeks of writing, 3 weeks of editing. I wrote super fast because it was so much easier to write than an iOS review, because I was writing out of personal experience. And if anything, you could argue that the research had been done for 7 years before, not in 2 weeks at the beginning of the beta season. And it's, it was a very different process. I didn't have to keep track of beta 1 and beta 2 and beta 3 and all the changes in all the betas. It was like, this is how I use the iPad. This is stuff that I already know. So I can just write. I don't need to wait for developer documentation to go live. I can just write what I know. And it was a nice change of pace from an iOS review.
If you want to find links to all the stuff we spoke about this week, you can head over to the website, relay.fm/connected/244. While you're there, you can get in touch. There's an email link there in the sidebar for feedback and follow-up. Or, of course, you can do that on Twitter. You can find Federico there as Viticci, Viticci, and he is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. You can find Myke online as IMYKE, and Myke is the co-host of a bunch of shows here on Relay FM. You can find my writing online at 512pixels.net. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH. As a reminder, we are doing a live show in August in San Francisco. That link is in the show notes. If you're going to be in the area, we would love to see you. It's going to be a really special evening. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Backblaze, FreshBooks, and TextExpander. And until next time, gentlemen, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Adios.